Welcome back to another opportunity to learn, grow, and continue to uncover and live from that place of peace and power at our core that we all have right underneath the surface. Today, I want to drop into one of the largest parts that keeps us identified with the fear, with the worries, with the anxiety, and that is the story that we tell ourselves on the emotions that we experience. There's a big difference between those two things. Emotions on their own are not bad or good. The story that we tell ourselves based on the emotions that we experience are what put the labels of a good experience or a bad experience upon those emotions. And it's in between the emotions and then when we tell ourselves that story where we have the power to shift from a place of living in fear, of living anxiously, of living from anxiety, to a place of living from love and a place from being able to create our lives. It's in the story that we tell ourselves on the emotions that come up for us, the emotions that we experience. A perfect example of this is I'm currently living at my parents' house. And as a result of living at my parents' house, I'm spending a lot of time around my parents. And family, as we've talked about many times on the channel, is the birthplace for many of our triggers, right? Those things that really start to work us up. And so the other day I came downstairs, I was upstairs, came downstairs and I had to drive my mom to work. And she's in the car, she's driving, I'm in the passenger seat. And I noticed in this 10-minute ride that she was a bit quiet, a bit distant, and a bit short in the conversation that we were having. And as soon as that happened, I could start to feel my anxiety rise, my fear rise. I could start to feel tension in my body. And as soon as those emotions started to come up in my body, just a second later, I started to have thoughts around, oh shit, what did I do? Is it something I said? Is it something I did? And slowly but surely in that moment, my anxiety went from non-existent to being at a level 6 because now I was combing through the past 2 days of experiences between my mom and I that I could have done something wrong that could have pissed her off or put her in the mood that she was experiencing at that time. And my anxiety began to race. And this is where I had to catch myself in a cycle and break it so that I can come from a level 6 anxiety where I'm starting to lose myself in powerlessness and bring myself back down. And you can check out the video on how to break through that cycle here. But we want to stop that anxiety cycle from even happening by coming into the awareness on that emotion without having to tell ourselves a story about it that's going to really launch us into that anxiety. And so what I ended up realizing later on when she shared with me that she was just going through her own stuff is that actually it had nothing to do with me. It had to do with her just going through her own stuff. And so I was really getting worked up over nothing, right? Just to drive the point home even further. It's about the story we're telling ourselves on the emotion. And so, again, emotions themselves are nor bad nor good. They are simply signals, simply energy in motion within our body. And it's the label that we put on these emotions that will bring us into different ways of showing up in life because we're identifying with a specific story. And a really good example of this, another one, is the difference between anxiety, the sensation of anxiety, and the sensation of excitement. You often hear, I have often heard in my therapy, my coaching, that the emotional sensation is almost identical, like almost perfectly identical, if not actually identical. And it's really the label that we're telling ourselves that, oh, it's anxiety or oh, it's excitement. And I have found myself actually able to shift in that same state that I was in, shift what I was actually experiencing based on what I was telling myself about my current situation in my current environment. And it was so easy to flip. So again, just stressing that it's the label that we're putting, the story we're telling ourselves about the sensation that's coming up for us. And so what the work is here is being able to witness the emotion, to observe the emotion as it comes up without immediately telling ourselves a story about it, so that we can breed space between our emotion and the story that we tell, so that instead of reacting with an old story that we've been telling ourselves for years, now with that space we could start to tell ourselves a new story, write a new script, one that is more conscious, one that is going to be a healthier story for us, one that's going to maybe make us happier, make us empowered in how we are going to show up in whatever that environment is, rather than anxious and fearful, right? We get to choose between those two channels of fear or love. And so being able to be just a witness of the emotion, really being aware of how it feels in your body without immediately identifying with it, again, observing with space, observing or witnessing with space, this is where the power starts to come in. It's in that space between immediately reacting to that emotion or having space and being able to respond. And I'm being repetitive here because I know for me, I need to hear it many times to really digest it and embody this practice. And then we get to shift our story to one that's better for us instead of one that is really keeping us in that old conditioning, right? Because the stories that we're telling ourselves on these emotions are based on outdated conditioning. They're based on old habits and old core beliefs. And these old core beliefs and habits may not actually be habits and beliefs that are fueling our greatest good, our greatest selves to come out. And so that's really, really important that we can breathe the space to change our core beliefs, change our habits, and show up in an entirely different way. And so there's many ways to practice this witnessing. And I emphasize practice because this takes time to do, to breathe this space. It takes time to do. It's not instantly going to be, oh yeah, let me just witness. Every time that you do this, you're going to get better and better and better and better at it. It's just a matter of doing it more often, repetition. And so some of the tools that I use that I have found extremely helpful in me being able to create that space just one moment at a time. The first one for me has been meditation, and I've shared that many times before, because meditation is a formal practice of witnessing our internal experience, witnessing those emotions that are coming up, witnessing the thoughts that come up as a result of those emotions, right? So this is a formal practice of being able to do that. The second thing is exposure therapy. Now, exposure therapy is simply putting ourselves in the environment where we know we're going to be triggered, right? Putting ourselves in the environment with, that person that triggers us, or at work in the situation that triggers us, but doing it with the conscious awareness, the conscious decision to witness whatever is going to come up for you in those experiences without reacting. Witnessing, choosing to witness whatever comes up and choosing to respond in a different way than you would normally in those situations. This is exposure therapy. And again, we could start small here. You don't have to go chew off the biggest block. Start with something that feels a little bit easier for you. It's not extremely triggering. And work your way up as you build more confidence and you build more space. Meditation and exposure therapy. Now, my third practice for breeding this space, which I have come to love more and more over time, is journaling. Because journaling is an opportunity for us to, in a safe space, write down our experiences from the day, maybe a specific, very triggering moment or conversation. Being able to write it down, feel the emotions as we're writing it down and as we're expressing it, and being able to witness our experience, witness these emotions as we're writing. And it involves multiple senses, right? We're physically getting it out and we're being able to see it instead of just keeping it in our mind and trying to work through it in our mind. Being able to have different senses that are involved in this experience of reflecting and witnessing makes it that much more potent and that much stronger in creating that space between what's coming up for us and the story that we're telling ourselves. And so in these experiences, this is where we breed power. In responding consciously in that space instead of reacting on outdated conditioning, reacting without being able to see it. And here's a fourth thing. Breathing in these moments, deeply breathing in through the nose, into the belly, so that you are signaling to your body during these triggering experiences that you're safe, you're okay. And when you could trigger manually your nervous system to let yourself let yourself know that you're okay, then it will be even easier to have that space without getting so caught in it, because we're keeping the creative mind, the prefrontal cortex, online. It's not going to shut down because we have short breaths. It's not going to shut down because we're getting tense in our body. We're fueling our body with ease as we go through the experience by taking these deep breaths into the belly. These are 4 powerful practices to utilize to create this space, and there's many ways to do each of them. If you guys have questions about them, let's talk about it. If you have comments or other ways that you have been able to breathe space, let's talk about those. And let's just have a conversation about how we can start to show up consciously the way that we want to create our lives, instead of living in that anxiety, living in that anxious feedback loop, getting caught up and identified with those emotions that feel like dread, that feel like shit. Okay? Yes. And I encourage you to come every Sunday morning. I'm doing a Sunday morning meditation at 9 a.m. Eastern time. It's a really nice donation-based opportunity to just sit with community and practice this. And not only that, I now have a meditation retreat coming out at the beginning of June 2nd to June 5th, 2022. And I would be honored to have you there, because this will be a 4-day, 3-night experience to disconnect and really drop into creating that space for yourself. The last thing I'll mention here is I'm also offering one-on-one coaching now, so we could tie all these practices and tools into a personalized experience to really begin consciously creating our experience. Otherwise, much love to you. Let's create this space and let's show up to our lives consciously with more fulfillment, more happiness, more peace, and more power. Much love to you. I'll see you in the next video or in the comments or anywhere very soon. Much love.